When I opened the front door, I noticed women's and children's shoes. While I was taking off my shoes, I heard playful voices. We immediately headed toward the bathroom. When we opened the door, there were Luke, Irene, and a boy about 2 years old. "What are you doing?" When I called out, Luke looked at me in surprise and twisted his mouth into a smile. "Oh, so you're alive. I'm divorcing you," he declared proudly, and Irene giggled. "Sorry, but I've taken Luke for myself." "Divorce? You fools know nothing." My father appeared behind me and addressed them. Father kept telling them the truth until finally Luke collapsed and broke down crying. "My name is Serena, and I'm a 28-year-old housewife. My husband Luke is a year older than me, and we've been together since college. Fortunately, my in-laws live not too far away and are very fond of me, so we get along well. This is our 4th year of marriage. We were finally blessed with a long-awaited baby." My husband and in-laws were overjoyed. When I called my parents' house, they were delighted too. "Congratulations! Now you're going to be a mama." "Thank you, Mom. I had terrible morning sickness, so yours might be rough too." "Yes, but I'll do my best for the baby." "That's right. Hold on, your father is fidgeting next to me. I'll put him on." "Congratulations, Serena." "Thank you, Dad. This will be your first grandchild." "Ah, I can't wait to hold the baby." "How are things there? Any changes?" "Well, lately we've been having trouble with vegetable thieves. My parents run an organic vegetable farm, growing dozens of varieties that they sell nationwide through mail order." "Oh no. That must be awful." "Yes, it is. We're working on countermeasures now, replacing the fences and barriers with new ones. But don't worry. You just focus on having a healthy baby." Dad was laughing, but for a vegetable farm, theft is a matter of life and death. After hanging up, I consulted with Luke about it. "Vegetable thieves? Huh, so they have those in the countryside," he replied while fiddling with his smartphone, showing no interest at all. "It's really serious because their livelihood depends on it. We need to think of better countermeasures." No matter how much I explained, my husband treated it like someone else's problem. I heaved a big sigh at Luke, who was only half listening. Though I was worried about my parents' situation, as Dad said, my job now was to have a healthy baby. I tried to maintain a peaceful state of mind every day. The morning sickness my mother had worried about turned out to be relatively mild, and I safely reached my 4th month of pregnancy. Yes, everything looks good. I think it's probably a girl." "Oh, a girl." While looking at the ultrasound during my prenatal checkup, the doctor and I had this conversation, and I was impressed that we can tell the gender this early. If it's a girl, these clothes would be cute. When her hair grows out, I could put it in twin tails. Even after returning from the hospital, I kept imagining such things and rubbed my belly, saying, "Please be born healthy." However, when I told Luke after he returned from work, my happy mood was shattered. "What? A girl?" I could tell the atmosphere changed in an instant. "A girl?" My parents were so happy saying, "If it's a boy, he'll be the heir." "But even if it's a girl, she's still our precious child, right?" "Well, yes, but I'm disappointed." He let out a big sigh and complained. When my pregnancy was first discovered, my husband was overjoyed and had been helping with housework and shopping, being considerate of my condition. But from that day on, his attitude completely changed. His disappointment turned to anger, and he began treating me coldly. "Hey, could you help a bit more with the housework?" "Huh? I'm tired from work too." "You're home all day, aren't you? Even if you take your time, you must have plenty of time left over." With my belly getting bigger, cleaning the toilet and bathroom is getting difficult. If you're going to complain so much, why don't you just get an abortion? Luke said with a twisted smile, shocking me. How can you say such a thing? Well, it's going to be a girl, right? When she grows up, she might run away with a man like your sister did. What's that supposed to mean? My clenched fists were trembling. I have a sister named Irene. While in college, Irene had an affair with a married man and ran away with him. She's still missing to this day. If my daughter did something like that, I'd yell, "Give me back all the money I spent raising you." After all, she ended up dropping out of college, right? Being insulted about my family, I felt strong revulsion toward Luke for the first time. I was even starting to regret marrying him when I received a message from a high school friend. "Hey, isn't this girl your sister?" Looking at the photo sent to my smartphone, I was shocked. Indeed, the person in the photo was my sister Irene. But what surprised me wasn't that Irene was in it. The person walking arm in arm with Irene in the photo was none other than Luke. My high school friend knew about Irene going missing but didn't know about Luke, whom I met in college. That's why they sent it to me without realizing. Though shaken, I hired a detective to thoroughly investigate Luke and Irene. Determined to find some evidence, I searched Luke's bag while he was in the bath. Oh, so that's how it is. What I found was divorce papers with the husband's section already filled out. Though my body trembled with anger, I took deep breaths repeatedly to calm down, not wanting to affect the baby. Everything will wait until after the baby is born. Deciding to divorce after giving birth, I took only the divorce papers and closed Luke's bag. In my 8th month of pregnancy, pretending I hadn't noticed anything, I told Luke, "Hey, since I'm worried about my first childbirth, I'd like to go back to my parents' house for a while." Sounds fine to me. Luke, who had lost all interest in our baby, naturally agreed and added indifferently, "Take care on your way back." Words without any heart in them at all. I pretended not to notice this too and told him I wanted to temporarily return to my parents' house. Of course, Luke didn't offer to drive me, so I carried heavy luggage in both hands and took several trains to get back home. What? You came back alone? Where's Luke? My parents were surprised to see me return with a big belly carrying luggage. He couldn't take time off work, it seems. Of course, this was a lie. When I left the house, he was just lying on the sofa playing with his smartphone, barely waving his hand without even looking at me. I hadn't told my parents yet about my intention to divorce. I didn't want to be exhausted mentally and physically with divorce drama. So I planned to keep it secret from my parents until after the birth. Sorry for coming back when you're having trouble with the vegetable thieves. What are you saying? Of course we're happy. That's right. Please give birth to a healthy baby girl. At my mother's words, I deepened my smile. That's right. My parents and in-laws, even after learning it was a girl, not one of them showed any disappointment. The only one who was disappointed on his own was Luke. Just that man who failed as a father. "Serena, look at this," Dad happily showed me his smartphone screen. It showed the field, its surroundings, and the front of the house. What's this? I installed security cameras to catch evidence of the vegetable thieves. That's great. I hope they catch the culprit. Yes, we'll turn them in to the police. While I was staying at my parents' house, Dad checked the camera footage diligently every day. Seeing this, I thought, maybe I should have installed cameras at home too. But I decided the evidence from the detective was sufficient, and there was no need to see unpleasant footage unnecessarily. Even after several days at my parents' house, there wasn't a single contact from Luke. Though my messages showed as read, he never replied. The comfortable days at my parents' house passed quickly, and I safely gave birth to my baby. My in-laws rushed to be there on the day of delivery, allowing me to give birth with peace of mind. Serena, thank you for giving birth to a healthy baby. Such a beautiful child. Father, mother, thank you for coming all this way. It's nothing. It's for our precious grandchild. Serena, you did well. Make sure to rest your body for a while. But what is Luke doing at such an important time? He seems to be having a tough time at work. I told him not to force himself to come. We wouldn't want him getting sick. Please don't say anything to Luke. He might blame himself. I said this to prevent my in-laws from contacting Luke. If they contacted him now, it would ruin my plan. A month after giving birth, we planned to celebrate the baby's birth with both my parents and in-laws at my parents' house. Both sets of parents were delighted to see how well my child was growing. But of course, Luke didn't come on this day either. Even my parents and in-laws seemed to think this was strange. They kept glancing at me, looking for the right timing to bring it up. I have something to tell you, I said, and the four of them nodded with relief. I put the baby in the crib and took a deep breath before addressing both sets of parents. First, please look at this. Sitting around the table in the living room, I placed the photos and investigation results the detective had gathered in front of the four of them. No way, this is. Luke is having an affair? What? This is Irene. This can't be true. How terrible. The four of them each let out surprised voices and turned pale. Irene? My father-in-law, who didn't know my sister's face, asked, and I explained she was my sister. Your sister? The one who went missing, you mean? Yes. I don't know the details, but Luke and Irene had met during university days. So they couldn't have been strangers to each other. They've both been deceiving me for years. I showed them another photo. It showed Luke and Irene and a boy about 2 years old. Luke was holding up the boy and Irene had her arms around Luke. If you didn't know better, it would look like a heartwarming family photo. I kept quiet until now, partly because I wanted to stay calm until my baby was born. I bowed my head saying I'm sorry. Both sets of parents looked at each other and bowed to each other. No, we should apologize for our foolish son. No, not at all. We should apologize for our foolish daughter. We thought she had disappeared after destroying someone else's family, but now she's gone and destroyed her own sister's family. Serena, you must have been so troubled, dealing with this alone during your pregnancy? I'm so sorry we couldn't help you during such a difficult time. No, Mother, thank you. But I'm planning to divorce Luke. Everyone agreed with my words. We decided to submit the divorce papers I had taken from Luke's bag the next day, and then all go to the house together to discuss alimony and child support with Luke. Tomorrow, Dad will drive me home. I sent only this message to Luke. As expected, he read it but didn't reply. Fed up, I told myself this ends today and went to sleep. The next morning, while preparing to leave with my in-laws and mother, my father, who was checking the security camera footage, shouted loudly. Hey! Come look at this. What is it, Dad? Did you catch the vegetable thief? Everyone, including my in-laws, checked the security camera footage. This can't be. Is this? Should we call the police? But. We looked at each other, all 5 of us, in front of the footage. Eventually, after various discussions, it was evening by the time we returned home. When I opened the front door, I saw women's shoes and children's shoes. Well, this saves us the trouble of having to call Irene, I muttered, looking at my parents' faces, and they both wore expressions of utmost anger. Well, that's natural. While taking off my shoes, I heard playful voices. We silently headed straight for the bathroom where the voices were coming from. When we opened the door, there were Luke, Irene, and a boy about 2 years old. "What are you doing?" Luke looked at me with surprise, but the next moment, he twisted his mouth into a smile. "Oh, so you're alive. I'm divorcing you," he declared proudly, and Irene giggled. "Serena, long time no see." "Sorry, but I've taken Luke for myself." "Divorce? You fools know nothing," my father appeared from behind me and said to them. Father's voice was clearly displeased, and as his daughter, I knew it was completely different from his usual tone. But Irene, seemingly convinced she would be accepted, was excited and even smiled at our mother who was behind us. "Dad, Mom, look. Unlike Serena, I gave birth to a boy." "Irene, what are you saying?" Mother turned pale and seemed unable to speak properly. "Luke's parents will surely be happier with the grandchild I gave birth to." At that moment, Father's anger reached its peak. I could feel it too. However, Father just let out a big sigh as if suppressing his anger. "Get dressed and come outside," he told them just that and closed the bathroom door. While we waited outside the front door, the two came out laughing and playing with the child, finding something amusing about this situation. Luke stopped moving when he saw my father's car parked in the house's parking space. "Huh? Serena, didn't you come back by train?" "Well, I told you yesterday that Dad would drive me, didn't I?" "Well, yes, but..." Luke was flustered and exchanged glances with Irene for a moment. "Did you assume I had come back by train because I made it back safely?" "You did say, oh, so you're alive earlier." "No, I didn't say anything like that." "Maybe you misheard?" At Luke's words, Father smiled at the corners of his mouth. However, his eyes weren't smiling at all. "Recently, we've had vegetable thieves," Father said suddenly, and Luke seemed unable to follow this sudden change of topic. "We installed security cameras with night vision capability around our house." Hearing this, he finally seemed to understand the meaning. Luke and Irene turned pale. Father took out his smartphone and showed them the image. It showed Luke tampering with Father's car in the darkness of night. Luke and Irene froze while peering at Father's smartphone. As if suddenly realizing, Luke started making excuses. "No, I wasn't really doing anything. After all, you all made it home safely." He stammered, his eyes darting around. "We just noticed it now. We had been focusing only on the vegetable thieves." "What do you mean, Father?" "It's too late. If only I had noticed this footage earlier." Father shook his head and let out a big sigh. And behind him, Mother covered her face with both hands and started crying. "Huh? What? What is it?" Luke's voice trembled with confusion. "Your phone must have had several calls from your mother too." "What?" Luke turned on his heel in panic and went into the house. We followed Luke as he rushed into the living room to check his smartphone. Luke's hands were trembling as he looked at the smartphone screen. Peering from the side, there were dozens of missed calls from his mother. "This can't be. What does this mean?" "Huh? These calls, what?" "Luke, what is it? What happened?" Worried about Luke's state, Irene put the child down and grabbed his arm. "Hey, Luke. I don't know." Luke roughly shook off Irene's hand. Luke tried to call back, but his hands were shaking too much to tap the screen properly. In his frustration, Luke cursed while repeatedly trying to tap the screen. "Did you properly check the license plate and confirm it was my car?" At Father's voice, Luke looked up startled. Then he quietly averted his gaze from Father. "Well, I don't know your car's license plate." "Then, do you know what car your father drives now?" "No way." I was surprised too, to think he would be driving the same model and color car. Your parents also came to our house yesterday and stayed overnight to celebrate their first grandchild, since it's been a month since this child was born. Though you probably didn't even notice, I reached out and tapped Luke's smartphone. With a pale face, Luke put the shaking phone to his ear. Luke. What were you doing? I called so many times. On the other end of the phone, his mother was shouting in a tearful voice. Before his mother could explain what had happened, Luke was already crying. Well, that's natural. More than anyone else, Luke knew what he had done. What he had secretly done to the car in the middle of the night. What condition he had put the car in. The brakes suddenly stopped working, and while I only had minor injuries, your father. No, no, no. He was calling your name until the very end. At his mother's words, Luke dropped the phone and fell to his knees. He held his head and collapsed face down on the floor, crying. Why did Dad have to go through this? This is wrong. This isn't what I never meant for this to. That's right. This isn't what you meant to happen. You meant for us to have the accident. I looked down coldly at Luke, who had raised his face. That's what you said when you first saw me earlier. Oh, so you're alive. Tears welled up again in Luke's eyes as he looked up at me. Still sitting on the floor, he started crying like a child. If only I had shown my son to Dad earlier. Dad was so looking forward to having an heir. Son? Which child are you talking about? At my words from the side, Luke stopped crying. His tearful eyes widened with anger. Don't mess with me. Obviously, I mean the child Irene gave birth to. Unlike you, who could only give birth to a girl, Irene properly gave birth to our family's heir. 2 years ago. That's right, Serena. What are you saying at a time like this? Irene knelt beside Luke and put her hands on his shoulder and arm supportively. Seeing this, I couldn't help but laugh through my nose. What's so funny? Irene was acting like Luke's wife. That alone was funny enough. That's my line. Your child isn't Luke's, is he? I asked my mother to hold my baby and took out my smartphone. I showed them the image my high school friend had sent. I've known about your affair for months. I smiled sweetly at the two frozen figures. I had a detective investigate thoroughly. Looking back and forth between their faces, I took several photos out of an envelope. They showed Irene with an unknown man. Of course, this wasn't the married man she had an affair with in college, but yet another man. Irene, you really have a thing for married men, don't you? Huh? Why do you have photos of me meeting that person? I told you, didn't I? I had a detective investigate thoroughly. I've had months, you know. They uncovered quite a lot. Luke let out a small aha as he listened to our conversation. I even know that you're receiving child support from this man. Why do you know even that? Irene covered her mouth with both hands after saying that. But it was too late. Luke stood up and grabbed Irene's arm. You deceived me. He shook her roughly, demanding answers. I'm asking if you deceived me. What? What are you saying? You were the one saying, he looks just like me and all that. It's laughable. What did you say? Watching Luke rage about being deceived, I couldn't help but laugh. Luke, you're in no position to be angry at Irene, are you? After all, when I got pregnant, you were really happy, weren't you? That was because you weren't planning to remarry Irene, right? If you hadn't been told my baby was a girl, you were planning to continue our marriage, weren't you? You said you were going to divorce her, didn't you? Was that a lie? Shut up. Oh, was that it? But didn't you think it was strange, Irene? It's been 2 years since your son was born, right? If he was planning to divorce me, he would have done it long ago. Luke was making fun of you for dropping out of college, you know. Maybe he didn't really want to make you his wife. What? Is that true, Luke? That's right. Who would want to marry a woman who had an affair and dropped out of college? The only reason I thought about marrying you was because Serena's child was a girl. I had no choice. What? You bastard. At the ugly shouting match between the two, Irene's child clung to my mother, whom he had just met today, and my baby in my mother's arms started crying loudly. I took the baby from my mother, and she picked up Irene's child. It's okay, Ethan. I'll protect you. Suddenly, Luke, who had been shouting, swallowed his words. He hurriedly peered at the baby's face in my arms. Did you say Ethan? Yes, I did. Actually, I had given birth to a boy. At 4 months, they said it was a girl, but at 6 months, they clearly confirmed it was a boy. Why didn't you tell me? Huh? Why would I? I had no intention of telling someone who changes their attitude based on gender. This was also why I had stopped my in-laws from contacting Luke on the day I gave birth. With the divorce papers not yet submitted, I couldn't let Luke know the baby was a boy. Because if I did, he would probably oppose the divorce. If he destroyed the unsubmitted divorce papers, the divorce might drag on. I wanted to avoid that. Looking straight at Luke's face, I replied in a low voice, "Gender doesn't matter. There's no difference in how precious my child is." Whether he hadn't heard my words or not, Luke started laughing while staring at Ethan. Great. Let's start over, the three of us. After all, Ethan is our family's true heir. I was utterly exasperated and told him with a sigh, "Do you understand what you've done? Besides, we're not husband and wife anymore, we're strangers. I already submitted the divorce papers I found in your bag." What? But he's my son, isn't he? As Luke reached out toward Ethan, I turned my back to hide him. I'm glad. This child won't have to be a criminal's son. Suddenly, Luke froze as if cold water had been poured on his head. You're right. I'm sorry, Dad, I'm sorry for being such a foolish son. At my words at this timing, Luke's mental state collapsed. Still crouching, he kept repeating words of apology to his father, continuing to cry with regret. You really turned out to be trash, didn't you? Came a low, stern voice, and Luke looked up. His parents were standing at the living room doorway. Dad, Mom, why? Actually, when Dad checked the security cameras this morning, what he noticed was Luke tampering with the car. From there, Dad hurriedly called a mechanic friend to come look at it, showed him the footage, and had the car inspected. The reason we didn't get home until evening was that we were having the brake abnormalities that were discovered repaired. You foolish son. Luke's father grabbed him by the collar and punched him, and Irene dodged Luke as he flew. What if something had happened to Serena or her parents or the baby? You were about to do something irreparable. Yes, I'm sorry. Luke cried and apologized, and between sobs, he kept mumbling, I'm glad you're alive, while tears and snot ran down his face. In the end, Luke and Irene got down on their hands and knees and apologized to me, my parents, and his parents. He thanked my father for preventing the accident. After divorcing Luke, I now live with my parents and son at my family home. Luke seems to have truly reflected on his actions, as he properly pays alimony and child support. Even now, every few days, I get messages from Luke saying he wants to start over. He seems lonely returning to his dark, empty house, but it's his own doing. He should be grateful he's not in prison. Of course, I have absolutely no intention of starting over with him, so I continue to respond coldly. However, it's different with his parents. My in-laws occasionally come to visit with lots of presents for Ethan and dote on him. Ethan seems to love his grandparents as much as my parents, and he laughs happily when they come to play. As for Irene, she disappeared again with her child after that. However, it seems she's started secretly keeping in touch with our mother. You need to have awareness as a mother, mother lectures her, and Irene apparently falls silent as if sulking. And come home sometimes to show us your healthy face. When mother says this, Irene apparently cries softly on the other end of the phone. For my parents and me, Irene's child is an important family member. We wish for his happiness as he grows up too.